Only a liar would say I have 100% confidence. I don't have 100% confidence that we're going to finish this interview.
I mean, it is so true. What was he going to say? 90?
I don't have 100% confidence we're gonna finish this interview. All right, let's get to the full interview. We're just gonna go through this because there's just too many tidbits. I just want to see the whole exchange. Let's just go through it.
Gang members, murderers. We had many murders, 11,888, they think. Some murdered more than one person. So you had murderers coming in, you had everybody coming in, and not just South America, from all over the world. They were emptying their prisons into our country. And now it's totally closed down. And you've seen just yesterday, they announced 99.9%. Nobody thought that could happen. And it happened quickly, very quickly. And I think that's very significant. But we're doing other things that are very significant. Results will take a little bit longer because it's one of those, it's complicated. It's many years of trading abuse. We've been abused by other countries for years and years. They laughed at us. They thought we were stupid people, and we're fixing it. And I think that's going to be very, very important. But
we have a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, I would really say that the border is so important.
And we'll get there. Immigration, huge, and we're going to get there. But I want to start with the economy, the number one issue for so many people, for just about everybody. It's one of the main reasons that you're back in this office. And now we have this trade war with China that Moody's and other analysts say is going to cost American families thousands of more dollars per year. And there is a lot of concern out there. People are worried, even some people who voted for you saying, I didn't sign up for this. So how do you answer those concerns?
Well, they did sign up for it, actually, and this is what I campaigned on. I said that we've been abused by other countries at levels that nobody's ever seen before. We were losing $3 to $5 billion a day on trade. We were losing $1.5 trillion to $2 trillion a year, not sustainable. They were taking advantage of us like they've never. I could have left it that way, and at some point there would have been an implosion like nobody's ever seen. But I said, no, we have to fix it. I've wanted to do this for many years. I had the best economy during my first term. We had a tremendous economy, tremendous success. And we did tremendous numbers of tariffs we took in a lot of money from tariffs, China in particular, hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs. We had no inflation, as you know. We had an incredible economy. We're given credit for a great economy. But I said, we have to fix this, otherwise it's just not self-sustaining.
Well, one of the things you ran on was you'd said you'd bring prices down on day one, and that it would happen fast, and that it would happen fast. And
I have.
Most economists will tell you that tariffs will raise prices. So don't your tariffs cut against that promise you made to bring prices down?
No, because I had massive tariffs on China, if you remember, in my first term, and we had essentially no inflation, like around 1% inflation, which is like a perfect number. And then when Biden took over, it went through the roof. It went to probably the worst inflation we've ever had. I mean, we had an inflation nightmare. Now, if you look at what's happening now, we're only there for 100 days, as you say. And in 100 days, we took over. We had bad inflation for 4 years, for 2 years especially 2 years of his administration. I would say record-setting like we've never seen. They say 48 years, the worst in 48 years. I say it was much worse than that.
Yeah.
Right. So now if you look at what's happened, energy is down. Gasoline hit $1.98 in a few states during the last couple of days. It was $3.50 and $4 and $4.50. But gasoline is way down. When I took over, you remember the big thing with eggs. They hit me the first week. Eggs, like it was my fault. I said, I didn't cause this problem. This problem was caused by Biden. What's the problem with eggs? And they said, they've doubled. And well, eggs are down 87% since I got involved.
A lot of that is bird flu.
And by the way, and there were plenty of eggs for Easter, which we just went through. There were plenty of eggs for Easter. They were saying you won't have enough eggs for Easter. My secretary did a fantastic job on eggs. Groceries are down. Everything's down.
Okay.
Interest rates are the same. Interest rates should be down, but we have a Federal Reserve that wants to be stubborn. They want to be cute.
We'll get to that. You said something a couple of weeks ago that struck me. You said concerning the tariffs, which economists say are going to raise prices, you said, quote, hang tough. It won't be easy. You said that to the American people. Is that what Americans should expect, some hard times?
I've said
because
that
of
during
these
my
tariffs?
campaign. Look, we won a campaign by a lot. We won all 7 swing states. We won the popular vote by a lot. You know, we had a tremendous campaign. I said all of these things during my campaign. I said, you're going to have a transition period. We've been ripped off by every country all over the world. They're laughing at us. They thought we were stupid people, and we were. And I said, that's not going to happen. We're not
But
going to let that happen.
hard times are ahead?
I don't think so. I
Hang
think
tough.
great times are ahead. Look, since I came in, gasoline is down, gross.
Do you hear this guy? He's just like, hard times are ahead. Hang tough. He's just saying words. Hang tough. He's not saying, but you said hang tough. He's just like, hard times ahead. Hang tough. Why are these people making 7 and 8 figures? Why? And I'm held up in a hotel room and I gotta be the cameraman and the audio guy. What? I get no teleprompter. My wife's gonna come in with the baby. I'm gonna hope you guys don't hear that. What is this? This is ridiculous. You should stop. Listen, I love that he takes all the interviews, but man, he doesn't have to take this stuff anymore, man. Should be done with this stuff. I'm telling you, man.
Groceries are down, egg prices are down, many things are down, just about everything. You know, you don't have the drop in fuel and energy and oil like we did. I took it from maybe $3.20, maybe more than that, down into a much lower number. When you have that kind of a drop, you're not going to have inflation.
Not now, but it's the tariffs, right? We still have 145% tariffs on China.
Why is it
Your Treasury Secretary said we basically have an embargo on China.
Look, you're
and
trying
that-
to say something's going to happen,
no,
Terry.
No, okay, well,
nothing's going to happen.
You know business.
Terry,
I want to ask you.
Terry, I do know business.
Yes,
and
so 145% tariffs on China, and that is
That's good.
basically
That's
an
good.
embargo.
They deserve it.
It'll raise prices on
They
everything
deserve
from
it.
electronics to clothing to building houses.
You don't know that. You don't know whether or not China's going to eat it.
That's mathematics.
China probably will eat those tariffs, but at 145, they basically can't do much business with the United States. And they were making from us $1 trillion a year. They were ripping us off like nobody's ever ripped us off. And by the way, we have other countries that were just as bad. If you look at the European Union, it was terrible what they've done to us. Every country, almost every country in the world was ripping us off. They're not doing that anymore.
I want you to think about the boom that this country has had in small businesses, mom and pop Etsy stores, small businesses that
Really?
became
They
big
haven't
businesses.
had a boom because of inflation.
Well,
the
no,
boom,
what
the
they've
boom
done-
was inflationary boom. The people were wiped out with inflation. I
Yes.
mean, you read the news, you
Yes.
do the business
now
stuff,
they
I
face,
assume.
Now, a lot of them built those businesses on the trading model.
Yeah, and they're gonna
before
make
you.
more money
They
now.
sourced their products overseas, and now they're looking at an extinction
I've
event.
been here.
It's a disaster for them.
I've been here for 3 months. I've taken a trade deficit down to a number that's very, very starting to get really good. I just got here. We had a country that it was not sustainable, what Biden did to this country, between the open borders where criminals poured into our country, between every country in the world ripping us off on trade. It was not sustainable.
So your message to those small businesses who are saying, we can't live a month, 2 months with these tariffs. Apple got a big deal. Is there something for them?
No, not only Apple. We've got $7 to $8 trillion being invested in our country in 2 months. Biden didn't have that over a year. I mean, if you look at Biden, nobody was really investing in this country. Everybody was ripping off our country. Apple's putting up $500 billion, but that's only one of many companies. Companies are flooding into our country right now.
So your answer to the concern about the tariffs is everything's going to be hunky-dory?
Everything's going to be just fine. It wouldn't have been if I didn't do this. I had a choice. I could leave it, have a nice, easy time, but I think ultimately you would have had an implosion. Our country had inflation that was worse than they've ever had it before. You don't mention that. Why don't you mention that? We had the worst inflation probably in the history of our country. People say 48 years. Probably in the history of our country, we had the worst inflation. And people were dying over the inflation. You know that. Now the grocery prices are coming down, the energy prices are coming down, gasoline's coming down. It's all heading in the right direction.
Okay, let's move on to immigration.
Coming up.
It is an undeniable fact that illegal crossings at the southern border have plummeted, a staggering decline. But there are questions about your methods.
President Trump, the first 100 days.
This is a YouTube video. What are you guys doing? Just show the whole interview. What is this? You doing a commercial for your own company in a YouTube video? Get out of here.
Gets deported, gets a hearing first to make their case.
Well, are we talking about people that are citizens of our country or not?
No, you're not deporting citizens at this point.
Well, let me ask you, did they get hearings when Biden allowed 21 million, because I think the number is 20 million people to flow into our country? You had 21 million people that came into our country through a stupid open border, and they were prisoners, and they were people that you don't want in many cases in our country, right? They came from all over the world. They came from the Congo. They came from South. They came from all over the world. We're talking about some of the roughest countries in the world they had here, including terrorists, by the way. Now,
but
did we give them a hearing when they came in?
Well, the law requires that every single person who is going to be deported gets a hearing first.
Well,
do you acknowledge that?
I'll have to ask the lawyers about that. All I can say is this. If you're going to have 21 million people, and if we have to get a lot of them out because they're criminals, we're going to have to act fast. We can't. Do you think we can give 21 million trials? Let's say each trial takes 2 weeks. Is that what you want us to do?
The law
give
is the law, sir. The law is the law, and you're
the law
sworn
doesn't
to
say anything
uphold it.
about trials.
No, not trials, hearings. I said
These
hearings.
people came in, they're not citizens. They came in illegally. They came into our country illegally.
And
we have to get them out.
There's a legal process for that.
I can't, sure, and we follow the legal process. I can't have a trial, a major trial for every person that came in illegally. We have thousands of murderers that came in. They're going to murder people. They already have murdered people in our country.
Right, so
we have to get them out,
They're
and we have to
bad
get them
guys,
out fast.
Really bad guys, but in our country, even bad guys get due process, right?
If people come into our country illegally, there's a different standard. These are illegal. They came in illegally.
But they get due process.
Well, they get a process where we have to get them out. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the Venezuelans.
They get whatever my lawyers
What was he going to say?
say.
Right. All right.
They get whatever my lawyers say. Man, people have this notion that they're, like he said, you're going to have 21 million trials. Like, that's what's going to have 21 million hearings. Each hearing takes a day. What do you talk? What are these people? What is this? Like, obviously, I know that this is just something to make President Trump seem bad, right? That you can tell by the way he's leading the questions that he's answering, you know, the fact that he's trying to lean towards Trump not giving people due process. But if you just run into the country, if you just run in, that's what these guys were doing. You just run in. Why do people think there's this due process that's supposed to happen? You ran into the country. You ran in and just said, I'm staying here. And they're like, no, you can't stay here. And they're like, well, I'm staying. Well, you got to give them due process. What due process is there? The only thing I could possibly think of is if you find out, are they really asylum seekers, right? That's it. That's the only thing you really think of. Because otherwise, of course, they get a process of, you're here illegally, you've benefited, you've gotten money, you've gotten stay, you've gotten food, you have to go. What other process should there be? I actually don't understand when people say this. What process are they looking for? That they should just, like, a whole court hearing of they plead their case? And it's like, no, you came in illegally. You're supposed to plead your case from your country or come in legally and plead your case where you need to plead it. Hire an immigration lawyer. Like, and if you can't afford what, there's other, you have to go through due process to get into the country. And for some reason, in the mainstream and the liberal mindset, they shouldn't have to follow a process to get in, but there should be a process followed for them to leave. What is It's so destructive. It's this tolerance or influence to their own peril. And the people who push it the most are completely unaffected by it. Because the people who are in Chicago, in the hood, that are having their community centers and places where they convene and feel safe together, they lost all that. They're not looking for this due process. The people who are out of nowhere seeing that $53 million gets put from New York taxpayer money into the illegal immigrants, into their shelters and everything, they're not looking for the due process. It's the people who live in Beverly Hills, the people who are these elites, the people who will benefit from these people if they become voters. They're the only ones looking for this due process. It's ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous.
Let's talk about the Venezuelans. You deported more than 200 Venezuelans to that prison in El Salvador. You say they're violent, they're gang members, they're terrorists. Many of them don't have a criminal record at all.
Well,
but I want to.
I'm not so sure about that. If you take a look,
I want to read you something.
Excuse me. When you look at those people, they were violent people. They were violent people.
But many of them don't have a criminal record
Go
at this
ahead.
point.
I don't know.
I want
That's
to
what
read you
you
something.
say.
Well, it's based on their lawyer, what their lawyers have said. Okay. Joe Rogan said this. Joe Rogan, one of the leading podcasters, Trump supporter, about the deportation of Venezuelans. He said, quote, rounding up gang members and shipping them to El Salvador with no due process, he said it was dangerous, and added, quote, we got to be careful that we don't become monsters while we're fighting monsters. Is Joe Rogan right?
Oh, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, we want to be careful, and we are careful. We're doing something that has to be done. We have a country that's very sick. Joe Biden, and it's not him because I don't even think he knew what the hell was happening, but the people around him are vicious people, and what they've done to the country is unbelievable. They've allowed 21 million people to pour into our country. Many of these people are criminals. They've allowed you mentioned Venezuela, the jails of Venezuela to be emptied into the United States. Do you know Venezuela crime is way down? Way, way down. You know why? Because their criminals are now living happily in the United States of America, and we're getting them out. And I was elected to get them out, and we're getting them out.
Under the law.
And we're getting them out fast, and we're getting them out legally. Now, in some cases, we have judges. In some cases, they're radical left judges. What happened the other day where a judge was protecting a criminal was horrible. And I think she's got big problems, frankly. And there are a couple of them like that.
I want to talk about one
Wait
man.
a minute.
Yep.
We have to be treated fairly by judges. And we're not being treated fairly by all judges.
Oh, that's a subject. So you're saying that you don't like some of the rulings, some of the court orders?
I think the rulings will be overturned, yeah.
All right. Well, let me ask you about one man.
See, that's the thing. Like, this guy says under the law when he's talking about Joe Rogan's comments. And I know about this because I did an episode on this comment that Joe Rogan actually said. And there's actually more to it. And the guy actually misquoted Joe Rogan. But that's aside from the point, because of course they're going to do that kind of thing. Joe Rogan's talking about the Maryland man. That's who Joe Rogan's talking about. Because apparently he's not this and not that. Because that's when the story was first developing. That it was just a Maryland father who was taken mistakenly and not really a part of anything and actually a good guy. And then later it came out, and I made this episode because I was like, oh, Joe Rogan doesn't know this, that the guy has a restraining order from his wife for domestic violence, that the guy was stopped for suspicion of human trafficking, that the guy has these tattoos that actually have MS-13 via a marijuana leaf, a smiley face, a cross, like the cross here, and a skull that symbolizes MS-13. It's a coded way of having the tattoos so you can rep the set. You can rep your set, but you don't actually show it. So when the police capture you, they won't actually know what your tattoos are. But because they're working with El Salvador's given them this whole database of tattoos, so they actually know which tattoos are affiliated with the gang. And that's why this guy was taken, and that's why he's over there now. It's just ridiculous the way that they represent all this stuff. They have squatters' rights. Yeah, that's what people. And when Trump says he was voted, when people voted for him to do this. They really did. And this guy said like, oh, within the law. That's not actually, no. There's probably 50, 60 million people who were like, the law is they came in and they should leave. No one who voted for Trump was like, oh, well, there's going to be a hearing for all these people, right? There's going to be a hearing and we're going to hear them out. And if all of them get to stay, well, then that's fine. That's what we voted for. No. There are so many black people who don't want to be replaced, who just want them out. There are so many Latinos who were like, my parents did it the right way. I had to do it the right way. Why should they just be able to cut the line? And they want them out. There are so many Americans that are just like, no. We just want them out. We're not looking for a hearing. We're not looking for our tax dollars to be wrapped up in this anymore. The only way they want their tax dollars wrapped up in this whole thing is paying for planes and buses to have them leave. That's it. That's what people really voted for. It sounds heartless to some people, but people don't want to be replaced, and they don't want their money spent on these people who just decided, I'm coming in here and I don't care what any of you have to say about it. It's just not fair, man. It's crazy. Anyway, let's keep going.
In one court order. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, he's the Salvadoran man who crossed into this country illegally, but who is under a protective order that he not be sent back to El Salvador. Your government sent him back to El Salvador and acknowledged in court that was a mistake. And now the Supreme Court has upheld an order that you must return him to facilitate his return to the United States. What are you doing to comply?
Well, the lawyer that said it was a mistake was here a long time, was not appointed by us, should not have said that, and just so you understand,
they're talking about the Maryland man right now.
The person that you're talking about, you're making this person sound, this is a MS-13 gang member, a tough cookie, been in lots of skirmishes, beat the hell out of his wife, and the wife was petrified to even talk about him, okay? This is not an innocent, wonderful gentleman from Maryland.
I'm not saying he's a good guy. It's about the rule of law. The order from the Supreme Court stands, sir.
He came into our country illegally.
You could get him back. There's a phone on this desk.
I could.
You could pick it up, and with all the power of the presidency, you could call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back right now.
And if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that.
But the court has ordered you to facilitate that.
I'm not the one making this decision. We have lawyers that don't want to do this.
But the buck stops in this office.
No. I follow the law. You want me to follow the law? If I were the president that just wanted to do anything, I'd probably keep him right where he is.
Supreme Court says what the law is.
Listen, I was elected to take care of a problem. It was a unforced error that was made by a very incompetent man, a man that turned out to be incompetent, that you always said was wonderful, a great genius, right? And now you find out, all of the media now, they're saying what a mistake they made. A man who was grossly incompetent allowed us to have open borders where millions of people flowed in. I campaigned on that issue. I wouldn't say it was my number one issue, but it was pretty close.
Right up there.
I campaigned on that issue. I've done an amazing job. I have closed borders. He said you couldn't do it. You wouldn't be able to do it. It would never happen. Well, it happened, and it happened very quickly. Wait a minute. When we have criminals, murderers, criminals in this country, we have to get them out, and we're doing it.
By law.
And you'll pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute over that.
Wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshop. So let me
That was Photoshop. Terry, you can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. I picked you, Terry, but you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
Right. We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture. We'll
and you think it was Photoshop? Well,
here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir.
Terry,
I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS, as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go on. They aren't there when he's in El Salvador.
They
Take
weren't
a look
there,
at the
but they're
photograph.
there now, right?
No,
but
they're in
now.
your picture.
Terry,
Ukraine, sir.
he's got MS-13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
All right. We'll take a look at that.
You do such a disservice.
We'll take a look at
Why
that,
don't you
sir.
just say, yes, he does, and, go on to something else?
It's contested. Ukraine.
Coming up.
This is, I don't like the mainstream, but at the same time, I wish I could work for them just so I could be like, okay, this is how it works, guys. You don't just, we're not making a
Historic media.
commercial in the middle of our YouTube video. Okay, guys? We don't do that. We're not doing that because that doesn't make any sense, guys. And they'd be like, whoa, what do you mean? What do you mean it doesn't make any sense? People have to hear about some things. Okay, so let me just break down what these guys are actually talking about here. Okay, so what he's saying, he thinks that what Trump is talking about, MS-13 tattoos, what he thinks Trump is talking about is this. He thinks Trump means, oh, he has this tattooed on his hand. Trump's talking about these tattoos. He thinks you're talking about these tattoos. He's saying, this is Photoshop, sir. No, it doesn't actually say MS-13. Worst interviewer in the world. In the world. To not be able to situate that properly. So he thinks that Trump thinks that these tattoos above are real. They get paid millions of dollars, guys. Guys, they get paid millions of dollars. I see Daisy talking about having to go to Temu and yard sales for clothes. This guy who doesn't even know that Trump's talking about these tattoos and thinks that he's talking about this gets paid millions of dollars. That's where we're at. That's where we're at, guys. That is what we are doing today. Oh my God. So just to clarify, Trump obviously knows these are the tattoos. The guy who's interviewing him, Terry, you sound like a dumbass, Terry. I'm not gonna lie, okay? Terry, you sound halfway retarded, Terry. I don't understand what's going on with you, Terry. You look like you have sense in your head, but then you talk. You okay, Terry? He takes a lot of pole every day. Jesus. Oh man. So that's what he thought Trump was talking about. Just ridiculous. And on top of that, doesn't even want to take the time to clarify, Of course.